Welcome to The Table, the podcast where we share real stories, struggles, and victories as we walk together in faith. Today, Jenna and I are chatting more about our conversation with Morgan last week. If you didn't hear it, just pause here and go back and listen now. This lie is about feeling like you're all alone. And don't we all feel that way sometimes? It's one of those moments that the enemy can sweep in and make us feel like no one understands, no one cares, and no one sees us. How often have you turned inward, spiraling deeper and deeper into yourself during those moments? Well, guess what? There's hope, even in those hard moments. Jesus changes things. You can bring your feelings to Him and allow Him to speak truth over them, knowing He can handle it all. He's not surprised or caught off guard, but instead, He's waiting for us to lean into Him. Okay, let's just get into it. Come to the table and join us for this week's episode. Okay, hey Jenna.
Hi.
I'm excited to be back. Last week's conversation with Morgan just was so good. I enjoyed it so much. And so I'm excited to just get to talk about it now with you again.
Yeah.
How's it going in the Johnson house?
Going well. How
Good,
about you?
good.
How about you?
Go, going well, going well. We are just trying to enjoy these last few weeks of summer before we get back into school. So.
hmm
This lie that we're talking about today is the lie that I am alone.
hmm
And if you are joining it, like if you're a listener and you're joining us this week and you didn't listen to last week's episode, you need to go back and listen to it because it really sets the foundation for today's conversation. And Morgan said a lot of things that you need to know if you're struggling with this lie in any capacity. And Jenna, I know last week we talked about how this lie and really the lie before this too about I'm not enough. There's so many different ways that the enemy uses that to attack us.
hmm
And would you like tell us a time that you have felt I love that you said that. Side note, this is my brain, and our poor listeners have to listen to me talk like this all the time. I love in last week's episode that you mentioned that this is a lie that we feel. So it's not necessarily always something we believe, but we feel it like to
hmm
our core sometimes.
hmm
Um, so my question is, Jenna, will you tell us about a time when you felt this in your life?
I've felt this multiple times, and I think that's why it feels so heavy and so serious because I know I've felt this and I've been there, and you almost ache when you hear somebody say it out loud. Like you hate for them to have to feel alone and that they've been there. And so I can remember the very deepest time of feeling alone, and I've had it four different times, is during a miscarriage. But my very first miscarriage was extremely difficult for me. I know this could be a trigger for some people, but I walked through it, and it's still something that's touchy for me. But we got married, got pregnant, and went to my first appointment, and there was no heartbeat. There was no baby, and that was one of the hardest times because up until that point, I really hadn't heard anyone ever talk about that. Or if I had, I didn't connect with it and I didn't understand it. I didn't understand pregnancy. I didn't understand cycles. I didn't understand what loss would feel like. I just never had paid attention to that because it wasn't applicable to me. But here I was, young, newly married, and I've miscarried, and my body had not processed it. And so we had to go to the doctor again. After finding out that we had lost the baby's heartbeat, we had to go to the hospital for the hospital to help me through that miscarriage. And I can remember how cold I was. They wheeled me back into an operating room. I remember looking up at the walls, and they were like a teal green tile, and I can still smell like the smell that was in there. And I remember looking up around the room and seeing all these nurses and doctors that I did not know. And I remember feeling so lonely. and wondering why God would bring me to this place. Like, why would you bring me here? Why would you get me in this place to feel this alone? And these people do this all day long. And yet I feel so alone here with these doctors and these nurses. And it took me 4 months after that. I wrestled with being alone and feeling lonely. And people came and sent cards and called and texted and started sharing their stories, which helped me to see that this is not just me that went through this. Lots of people had experienced it. And that comforted me some to know that I was not alone in feeling the way that I felt. But it also helped me to see that there's another side. Like I can get to the other side of this. I didn't feel it in the moment. I was just so sad and so disappointed and just questioning the Lord. Like, why would you even have me get pregnant to tell everybody we were pregnant just to take that baby away from me? And my perspective on it was just so wrong. But I remember a friend had recommended a book that I should read. And I thought, I'm not a reader. I'm not going to do that. So I went searching because I was desperate. I was so sad. I was probably depressed. Um, and that book called Hannah's Hope was such a light to me. It walked me through the story of Hannah and her infertility and her struggle and her wanting to have a child and God granting that. And she turned that child over to the Lord. And I just remember realizing that God was no different 4 months earlier than he is now. He's still good. He's still God. And he still has a plan. And I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know if we'd ever get to have kids because they couldn't explain why. Um, but I see now 4 miscarriages down and 5 kids here in my household that God has a plan. And I am not grateful that I went through that, but I'm also not sorry that I lost those 4 pregnancies. Because of those 4 losses, I have learned to become more empathetic. I have learned the value of life. I have learned the the greatness of God and His goodness in it. And I've learned that He does give and He does take away, but blessed be the name of the Lord. And I think that's the biggest moment in my life where I felt alone, walking through that season of loss. And every time it happened to me, it was still very lonely, but I learned that if I want to get through this, I've got to ask for help and I've got to let people know that this is a burden that I'm carrying that I literally couldn't carry on my own.
Thank you for sharing that. I think something as you were talking about it that made me think about our last conversation was just if you don't share that you're going through it or that you went through it, then it's almost wasted, or it can
I
feel that
love
way.
that she said that. Yes,
Yeah. And I don't know this. I have heard you talk about this before, but I don't know how many people you have been able to encourage through that same situation to help them not feel alone in a similar circumstance because you went through it.
right,
And it doesn't justify it, like it doesn't make it feel okay to you that now like you can help other people, but it's like it's a silver lining for sure. It's a blessing that the Lord gives that you can see your hard thing comfort someone else
right.
during the thing.
I think there's such a I think it's just so interesting that the Lord can take the messes and the hard things and turn them into something beautiful and use them in a way that we couldn't imagine, but He uses them in different ways. Like I've been able to send that book that was so instrumental in my life to other friends. I've also been able to take meals to those that have lost because people did that for us, and I saw what a blessing it was during that moment. I think it just really strips down the hardship and seeing that you can get through this and this is how the Lord will use it. This is how he can use it. No, it wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. It wasn't something I would ever want to do again. But if I can be a help to somebody else because the Lord chose this path for me, then I want to be willing and able to do it. And he's done that in multiple different ways, not just with miscarriage, but with our children having a Chiari brain malformation and the surgery that one of our children had to go through because of it. Um, but I think loneliness and this feeling alone is because we keep things to ourselves instead of one pouring them out to the Lord. Um, I think we really have to turn over those lonely seasons to the Lord, but I think it's because we want to hide. And a lot of times when we want to hide, we isolate ourselves and we just avoid. And I think that the Lord would prefer that we use our community and fellowship to pour into us. And like Morgan said, she was in her darkest moments and she started pouring out, and that's when the blessings came. Like she stopped looking at self and started looking at others, and the Lord just used that and lifted her spirit by pouring into others.
Yes, I think that the enemy wants us to believe this. Like, this is, in my mind, a card that he plays all the time in so many
Mhm.
different ways. Because he wants us to feel isolated. Because if I feel like I'm the only one who's going through this, I'm not asking you about it for sure.
Right.
I'm not telling you about it. I'm going to just suffer in silence. And I'm going to go deeper and deeper and deeper into myself. And I'm not going to grow during that season in the Lord. And the enemy has me exactly where he wants me. And he doesn't want any good thing for me. And so I in my life, I think I have seen where feeling alone leads me to be more alone and feel more isolated, and it just spirals out of control.
It does. Well, and when we're alone, we often feel like it it gets us to the point where we start being fearful and doubtful, and we
Yeah.
start getting angry. And I have to remind myself, like, God has not given me a spirit of fear. And that includes, anger and doubt. Like, in that, He's not given me that. He wants me to have a spirit of love and power and a sound mind. When you're lonely or when you're hurting and you're fearful and doubtful, your mind is sometimes clouded because you're basing your thoughts and your emotions on your feelings instead of the truth of who God is, what God has done, what God will do. And He doesn't want us to have those feelings. He doesn't want us to feel lonely, but He also sent His Son to dwell with us, to be with us and experience those same feelings. And I think a lot of times we are too busy looking at self in these downward moments. And really, where we need to be is upward and looking to Jesus.
I agree. I agree completely. And I'm glad that you said that about Jesus dwelling with us because a some amount of time ago, I don't know, I was listening to something, can't even remember what it was, but the point that stuck with me is that um, at the time I spent so much time praying, so much of the little amount of time that I prayed, praying that the Lord would be with me, that the Lord would be with my babies, that the Lord would be with my husband, would be with this person who's sick, would be with this person who's sick. And the podcast or the sermon, whatever I was listening to, the person was like, He has promised to be with you. You don't need to pray that He will be with you. He will be with
Mhm.
you. He's promised.
that. You are never alone. We have to just believe that and move forward. And it really changed, it stuck with me and it changed my prayers to be like, Lord, please comfort Morgan this week. I know you're with her. Please let her feel your peace. Or, whatever the situation is, protect this person. But I do think there's a point where we have to just believe that what he says is true and
Hmm.
then walk in it and act
Hmm.
on it and live our lives like we believe it.
I agree all the way. His name is Emmanuel, God with us. Like he says it in his word. He tells us what his name is, and we think we're alone, but he's not. We're not. He's there. And again, a lot of our feelings are our feelings. We're too busy pointing the finger at self and only able to see what's happening right here. And I think that's where I go wrong a lot of times is that I get stuck in self instead of looking to my savior, looking to, my community around me, my friends, my family. I think I just get stuck in myself. And that's usually when things go awry. But there is a saying, and I've probably said it here before, that Brian used a long time ago. When I first met him, he used this saying, you need to halt. When you feel things going wrong, when things are off, halt. And remember those four letters, HALT. H when you're hungry, A when you're angry, L when you're lonely, and T when you're tired. In those moments, halt and look where you are with the Lord. Have you been in His Word? Have you been in prayer? Have you been in fellowship with other believers? Have you taken the time to listen to Him and to see His perspective? Halt. And it's been so clear to me since hearing that, which is just a little cute, interesting phrase to use, but it's right. When I'm hungry and I'm not getting filled the way that I want to, it causes a problem and I'm looking at self and not the Lord. And when I'm angry, again, I am either pointing the finger at somebody or mad within myself, and I'm not looking to Jesus to take that anger away from me. I'm also, when I'm lonely, again, it's myself. I get lonely or I steal away and isolate myself because something's not the way that I want it to be. When I'm tired, when I am tired and I am weak and just can't find the next breath or step, I really have to start looking at where am I with the Lord right now? I really do have to stop, halt, and see where I am with the Lord because it's usually me. I'm usually the problem. He hasn't left me, He hasn't forsaken me. He's right there, but I've run away from Him and I have to halt and get back to Him.
I love that. I'm gonna try to remember that. Now I feel like that's gonna be a good like post this week or something to help people remember. A part of this lie that we've like hinted at this and talked about this a little bit, but this was something that I think I hear a lot or historically I've heard a lot is that like the Lord doesn't see me and doesn't understand what I'm going through. And um so I want to read this scripture and then I want you to talk to me about what you think about it. But this is Hebrews 4:15 and 16. And it says, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but
Mhm.
one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. So let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need.
Mhm.
And every time I hear people say like he doesn't understand, the Lord doesn't understand, it makes me think about this and all the things that he endured and what confidence it gives me in him to know that he can handle this because he
Mhm.
has. gone through all of these um, temptations, but didn't sin. And he promises to help us in our time of need.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and I think Jesus is probably, I said it before and I'll say it again, he's probably the best example of someone who would have felt alone, but he was never alone. He said so. His father was with him. And so, despite him walking through the many hardships he faced during his short life here on the earth, the Father was with him. He was praying to his Father. He encouraged us even to get away and pray to the Father. He taught us how to pray. Um, he was dwelling with us, but he also spent his time in those moments where he had to have felt lonely or had to feel different, or he's the Son of God walking on the
Yeah.
earth. He spent his time comforting those who were lonely. He spent his time with the orphaned. He spent his time with the widows. He spent those who were caught in sin. He knew all about people who were lonely, and he spent his time comforting them. And then when it was his time to leave, it was his time to die, he spent his last little bit not only talking to the Lord, but he was comforting his disciples. He was telling them, I'm gonna go away. The hour's at hand. And he says it, well, let me pull it up because it's so good. Behold, the hour is coming. This is in John chapter 16. He says, behold, the hour is coming. Indeed, it has come when you will be scattered, each to his own home, and you will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, for the Father is with me. And I've said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world. He knew all about loneliness and being alone. He knew that the end of his life was going to be done alone on the cross. And he spent that moment saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? Because the Father had to look away so that Jesus would take our sins upon him and he would die in our place. And if anybody knows about loneliness and that feeling of being alone, it's Jesus. And yet all of his words are reminding us that we're not alone and that the Comforter is here and that our Father is with us. And if we forget that and lose sight of the best example of facing this, then we've missed it. We've totally missed it because He is with us. He will not leave. He will not forsake us. He's promised us that over and over.
It's wild that you just said all that you just said, because this whole time I'm thinking about this other thing I didn't plan to say today. But I listened to a podcast a couple weeks ago, and I've just been thinking about this. It was about the cross, and this is going to sound really bad, but I'm just acknowledging that. I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to get from this because I know about the cross. Like, they're going to tell me about how terrible it was, and I know that. I've heard that all my life. But they said that, when we think about the cross, we see the physical pain that Jesus endured, and the agony. And um, yes, that is true. It was excruciating. But their point was that Jesus had never known life without the Father. And to be on the cross, like you just said, like the Lord could not look at him with all of our sin on him. And so their thought was Jesus had to feel what it feels like for the Father to lift off of him or to turn away from him. And how, I mean, that makes my skin crawl right now. Like how terribly painful that would have been, while he carried our sin and our shame and all of those things that we deserved, and not
Mhm.
him. And so you're exactly right. Like he has experienced every bit of loneliness that and
Yeah.
more than we ever will. And so he's the perfect example of how
Right.
to handle that.
When I think it also shows you, like, it's the same with Morgan saying in her darkest moment, she was trying to reach out to others and work on others. That's what Jesus did too. Like in
Yeah.
his greatest, darkest moments, he was worrying about his mother. He, not worrying, but making sure that she was going to be
Thinking of,
thinking of her and making sure she was going to be taken care of. He was also encouraging his 11 disciples that, I'm going away, but I'm not leaving you. And
Mhm.
he tells them, behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the world. And he meant it. Like he was comforting them, knowing that he was going to go to the cross. I love that in his deep, dark, heavy, hard moments, just like Morgan was talking about, like, what a beautiful example it is when we can stop and pour into others and comfort others and help them see they're not alone. I just love that about Jesus, the example he
Mhm.
set.
It's a great example. It's a great point to bring forward too as we think about this lie. What is in your notes that we haven't said
Well, I
as I
think
read through my notes?
I said it before, but I'll say it again. I think sometimes we think that being alone is a bad thing. And it can be when you're feeling it. But there are times when we need to go at things alone. There are times that our opinions need to be our own. There are times when our thoughts need to stay quiet. There are times when I need to go alone to pray. There are times when I need to be in the Word by myself. And there are times in life where being alone is good for me. Um, when the focus is right, when it's, I need to go away and pray, or I need to go away and study the Lord's Word. Being alone doesn't have to be a bad thing, but I do think it's important that we recognize that there is good in being alone, but there's also the point when we start feeling alone that the Lord doesn't want us there. He wants us to get into community. He doesn't want us to isolate. He doesn't want us to feel abandoned or deserted because we are none of those things. Even if the whole world forsakes us, even if everyone turns against us, just like Job experienced, Job did not turn his face from God because he knew who God was. He knew God had not left him. He blessed the name of the Lord. And I think that for me was the biggest when I looked up the definition of alone, and it talked about being isolated, lonely, and exposed, abandoned, deserted. All these things feel so bad. But then Jesus himself tells us that he's with us always, even when you're feeling those things, even when you feel this negative adjective or adverb in your life. He has not left us. He's not forsaken us. He's not deserted us. He's not abandoned us. So even if everyone else does, you still, you've got more than enough in Jesus Christ.
Hmm. That's so good.
Hmm.
The last thing that I want to say is something I think about with this lie, this statement. People are like, no one knows what I'm going through. No one can like relate. No one will understand. And I think I have felt that way sometimes. Like this situation is so unique that no one's gonna understand or no one can help me. But there's a verse in Ecclesiastes that says there's nothing new under the sun. And basically, we just keep doing the same things over and over and over
Right.
throughout all of time. And so, like, there might not be anyone who's been in the very specific relationship situation with this person under these circumstances at
Right.
this time, but there's always someone who can relate and resonate with what I'm going through. And in my experience, when I will accept that, the Lord points me in that direction. Like, I'm surprised by the people that he puts in my path that actually can relate. And and similar to your story that you shared with your miscarriage, like, just think about over the last 10 years or 15 years, how many people have come into your path that have walked something similar to that.
Hmm.
Even though you felt so isolated and alone when it was happening to you for the first time. And so I would want to encourage people to try not to feel like no one understands, because the Lord, he does some crazy things sometimes, and he'll put the right people in your path if you can see them.
Well, and another thing, like, that we don't think about, and I had this conversation with a mentor of mine today. She was saying about how we read the Bible over and over, or, now that I'm older, the word is more important to me, and I see the value in it and pouring into it. Um, and yet, when I was younger, it wasn't so much that way. I really do have a point to this. But she said, isn't it funny how those things we can read them over and over, and as we get older, we have to take hold of it for ourselves. And we have to really read it and really understand it, and it starts to matter in a different way. I think the same thing is here with loneliness, or these feelings that we have, and we think no one else understands them. When you've walked through it and you know that someone else has been there, it just brings you a comfort. And the word can be our guide for that. Like you said, there's nothing new under the sun. There's an experience in the Bible that is going to help you. I would have never thought to look to Hannah when I miscarried. I would have never thought. This is someone who's praying for a child. She's unable to carry a child, and she's praying over and over for it. But here I had one and I lost it. And it didn't it I would have never turned to her. But then as I read through this, her chapter and her story in the Bible over and over, it made me see that she felt the feelings that I'm feeling. She had the hurt of not having something that she longed for. And I think a lot of times, yes, the Lord can use others to help us, but He can use His word in ways that we can't think or fathom, and comfort us and help us to see that we're not alone in so many different ways. It's just that we have to take hold of it for ourselves and believe that He is who He says He is, and that His word is true. And it provides everything that I need to get by in this life. Every season of loneliness, every season of hurt, every season that I walk through, He's got it in His word for me, because all scripture is profitable. And though I may not need it at this very moment, like right now, I'm reading through Kings and Chronicles, and I'm like, why do I need this right now? But I don't have any doubt in my mind that the Lord is going to use that at some point. He's going to bring it to my remembrance, and I can go straight to it, and He's going to bless it. He will not return void. When you pour into His word, He will use it. He will make a way. And so when you're in those seasons of loneliness or feeling like no one sees you, open up His word, because there's
Yeah.
someone in there who has seen it, who's felt it, who's experienced it, and the Lord wants to use His word to bring peace to your soul.
Mm, that's so good. Thanks for sharing that, Jenna.
Thanks for coming to the table. We hope today's conversation encouraged you as you seek Jesus in the big moments and the little ones. Check out the show notes for any scripture, resources, whatever we talked about today. Feel free to share this episode, leave a comment, ask a question, or share your thoughts with us. Next week, we're welcoming another special guest to the table. You will not want to miss this conversation as we dive a little further into this lie, I'm all alone. Thanks for being here this week. Thank you for listening and encouraging us and each other. If you haven't already, go follow us on socials to see all the things we share throughout the week. We'll see you next time.